time effectively and wisely. Just remember, if you're not speaking, to go ahead and mute your audio, please, just so we don't get any feedback as we move forward. So if possible, please mute. And we've got a chat, so I'll try to answer the chat. It's being difficult. Okay. So somebody is online but had to call in as well because their computer is being difficult. So that's great. Thank you for letting me know you can see that. And unfortunately, I know all about, I don't know if y'all know this about me, but I tend to fry technology. I love technology and I fry it. So I can unfortunately relate. Carrie, if you want to go ahead and record this so that we'll get started. Sounds good. Thanks. And I'll wait till I see the little "it's recording" button.
I started it already.
Oh, it's already recording? It just didn't tell me it is. Hi, I'm still being recorded. Sorry for those of you waiting for me to start. Okay, thank you for your patience. All right, so we're going to be talking about really exciting things coming up next year. We've been in the middle of developing it this year and have seen amazing things. This is the control group. So I apologize yet again that y'all are automatically in this control group, but recognize that you have the option to be working with Fruved on your campus at your college level in the next year. And then I think you have that same situation where you can use the toolkit, I'll mention this at the end, in the following year at the high school. So I'm not sure if it's all bad to be in the control group because it just gives you an extra year to plan and make relationships and get things ready to go. So hopefully you will find it to be a benefit, actually. So we are talking about, as I mentioned, technology, and go on to the next slide. There we go. Okay, this is the way to think about this and to kind of keep track of where we are as I talk about what would be required for participation. This is a 6-step process. So we'll talk about the first step is all about waiting for my slides to change. No, that's not really what one of the steps is. Oh, the funniest thing is this happens to me when I'm teaching too. I don't know I just fry technology, Carrie. I do not know why it would not be going forward. We're going to try to do this and see if it'll cooperate. Okay, so the very first thing is to develop a partnership with the high school. Hopefully you already have that partnership developed. If not, this is a great time to say, we want to do this, we're going to jump in there, and you would go ahead and talk with people in the school board, principal, make sure you've got a connection at the school that's your champion teacher. We find that makes everything run so smoothly. If you've got somebody who's on board and who's interested, and again, the benefit to the schools for providing, besides the monetary that they will receive and that you will receive, is that they will be collecting data that they would then be able to use in the following year. So this can be a very useful source of data, not only for the school system, for the teachers and the principals, and it also, if they engage in the following year, is a great opportunity for the students to learn about research, and it can reflect really well on that champion teacher. So there are many levels and layers to why this might be a benefit for the schools to participate. So your team would still involve the researcher, and the graduate students potentially, undergraduate students potentially. These are not have to be, but we find that they're very helpful. The high school students are part of the team, even though they're not collecting data, they are providing information. So we consider them to be part of that research team overall. Your high school teachers are definitely part of your team, as well as that high school school administration being on board. Very important to think about. So what's the second step? The second step seems like a very easy step, but it's a very important one. For many people, it might be very easy. For others, it can be a little convoluted. So you kind of want to look into that as you think about doing this project, because we would need parental consent and assent. I'm jumping ahead slightly here, and the survey process is all online, and if you look at it from a 10,000-foot level, it's a very simple process, because it's you providing a link to the schools and the schools providing this link to their students in some different way, and the students get to fill out this online survey in the fall, and they fill it out in the spring, and that's all that they do, and that's great, and it's easy. But depending on your school situation, we do have to have that parental consent. In ideal world, you would be able to send out the parental consents at the beginning of the year. If your high school sends out a packet to the parents, or they come in one night and they sign everything at one time, we found that is the easiest way to get almost, across the board parental consent. Works really well. From there are many different levels or layers you could take to try to obtain parental consent. You could send home the consent forms by paper with the students. I actually have a high schooler myself, so I completely understand how that somehow things get lost. Not just at high school, starts from elementary school on up. Somehow those papers just don't get home to parents all the time, and then don't always get back to the school to turn in. So that one can be challenging. Another thing that because we've been trying this in different states and we've had different states do different things. We've actually had one state who received opt-out permission. And so they sent home a flyer that allowed the parents to contact and opt out of their students' data being collected. And that worked beautifully, obviously, for them, but that's just depends on your state level and what your IRB and your local school board's IRB will let you do. So if you have an opt-out process, very easy. Another state, we tried online consent forms. So there was a link that was sent to all the parents, and then they could click on the link and then just click yes. We've had varying success with that. So there are a variety of strategies, and if you end up working with this definitely will be working with you hand in hand throughout this process. This is a smaller group that will be doing this, so you'll have a lot more hand-to-hand contact with us as we help you through the process. And definitely that getting the parental consent is challenging. The assent process, we have through this past year, really, we've done on paper surveys, we've done online surveys, and we've learned a lot of lessons that are great. And one of the things that we have learned is that the online works better, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. But the assent process is at the beginning of that online survey. If you were doing a pen and paper survey process with your students, you would have that assent process at the beginning of the survey. They would assent to as well. We were able to provide this survey to all students at the school, but we only could use data from students where we had both parental consent and the student's assent. So we were able to do that at all of our locations, and hopefully that will be able to continue through the process, because the school itself can use that de-identified data for school purposes and for student projects and so forth in the following year. So it was considered part of the school project, class projects. So the third step theoretically could be the easiest, hopefully, and that's where you would provide your high school with a link. It's a link that the students could then complete within a 2-week time frame. We ask that to be done in that first month of school, and we open up that survey for you within the first month, and they go on. The students can go on their own time, and they can. I'll talk a little bit more about the survey in detail in just a moment, but there's a lot of flexibility in how that survey is taken for the students. Just for you to be aware as you plan, and what will be helpful is that you will receive the de-identified data set for use at your college level for research immediately. You don't have the same kind of pains that we've had this year where you have to wait on your data, because that data is kind of part of the intervention process itself, because the students are then using that data to make changes. In this case, you can receive the high school data at the college for college research use, but they can't receive the data. The high school cannot receive the data early on. So a slight difference, but an advantage, again, if you're working with, for your own research, or if you're working with students on their research projects. This is where the first stipends come in. Both the high school and the college receive $500. So it's $1,000 total, but it's $500 for the high school and $500 for the college. And that is what we're looking at is a minimum of 30% response rate. So it'll be dependent. We didn't want to give a specific number since the high school sizes can vary so much. And that has to include with consent process. So it has to be usable data. And after you've completed that 2-week process and you reach that 30%, now I will also say we've had a number of schools. We had one school who had almost 100%. They had just great success there. They also had the opt-out procedures to let you know, but they had almost 100%. We've had other schools who've done really well, close to that. I would say in Florida, maybe 70 to 80%. I don't remember the numbers. Maybe it wasn't that high. And I think that in Tennessee, we had about 50%, maybe close to it, not quite that. So you can see how there's variation. And we had real problems with our parental consent process because they had changed over this year how they do the documentation with the parents. So everything was just a little confusing. And that's because life happens. But either way, you can hear that there's, overall that 30% based on what we've seen this year. We've also been in a couple other states and they've greatly exceeded that 30% rate. So we know that's very feasible with, relatively minimal effort. That's that can be done. So I wanted to make sure we gave you something that was a feasible goal. So that 30% response rate is what we minimum ask for. After that 2 weeks, you submit the invoice. And what we're asking is that you submit the invoice for the $1,000, and you would actually then be distributing that $500 to the school. So that's something else you want to work with. We've seen a lot of variation. These are all things you might, if you're taking notes or if you watch this later, you might want to note and ask your teacher champion or your principal or your school administrator if they already have an arrangement. We've had a number of our schools have no problem at all, our colleges, giving the high schools money. We've had a few situations where we've had some challenges. The schools have been participating just fine. They love it. They're great. But we can't figure out how to give them money. So, I just so I'm not, so full disclosure, recognize that you want to know if that's going to be a barrier for you, because it can be complicated. Find a way to give the money. So just want to check on that. Okay, that's the third step. Talking a little bit more about that survey. Again, and I actually have this picture here intentionally, is because you can see people interacting as they're taking the survey. We originally had the survey designed to be done during class. And as I said, my son's in high school, so I get kind of I don't know if that's fair. I'm not supposed to say that from a research perspective. I get informal data collection that I'm not using, because that would not be right. But I've heard through the grapevine that the problem is with doing it that way, and a lot of people chose not to do the survey because you're sitting right next to each other. You can see each other's screens. And there was just a real feeling of not, no confidentiality, uncomfortable. So we quickly learned from that. I really appreciate that kind of feedback, because we all want to protect our kids. We all want to protect all children. So we adapted and changed to providing the link only, and then those students can take it. They could take it during school hours if they don't have access to a computer at home. If most schools will, at very minimum, have some sort of computer lab someplace, so they could take it during the day. We do the 2-week period of time so people can get to it. It does take approximately 45 minutes to complete. They could also do it on a smartphone, and they can leave and come back as long as they're on the same device to that same survey. So we recommend you can use a variety of different methods to advertise the link, and you can put it on flyers, posters. You could have some giveaways attached with people taking the survey. If you have access to iPads, maybe you go out during lunches and you have the iPads and they can take it right then during lunch. Although that's a long period. I hope they're eating lunch. But there are just a lot of different ways you could approach it. We have also found that it's very effective to have a drawing. That would need to come out of the money that you're providing. So whether or not a portion of it comes from your college money and a portion comes from high school money, or however you decide, once that money is provided, you can use that for anything that you need to use it. You're being paid for your services, so there's no reporting back that you need to do to us. But we found just even having the students were happy with $25 drawings. I don't remember how much Florida had and South Dakota had, but we did find that many schools used some sort of drawing that was an incentive process for the students. So a good idea is to actually ask your high school students how much would make it to where they would want to take it. That will be up to you to decide to do, if you do it at all. So the fourth step after you've done that is to have your college students, who hopefully, if you're lucky, have already completed your environmental audit in the previous year, this past year, and they will go in and do the environmental audits at the high school campus level. Again, there's online training, so if you have new people, this will not be challenging. They can do it. You could do it as a part of a college class, or if you just have a group of 2 or 3 for college students who are willing to go out and do this process. The high school campus is much smaller than the college campus, so it's a much shorter, easier process. So again, especially if you already have people who've done this, this will be much easier this go around on the high school campus. So both the high school and the college receives $250 for that data collection process, and again, you submit those invoices after the audit is completed. The fifth step is conducting nominal group technique focus groups. And this is up for discussion. If you're really concerned about completing this at your site, please let me know. We found that this is very effective. It is using the M for modified. Using this technique it's a facilitator with very limited training that we provide can very effectively run this focus group. It's a much more structured focus group than the typical qualitative focus group. You also receive that data back immediately from that focus group. So we'd ask you to run one focus group with parents, one with students, and one with teachers. Using the same parameters of anywhere from 3 to 12 people per focus group will be what's recommended. We, of course, ideally it's more like 6 is a nice size for a focus group. 12 is really large, 3 is small. The other thing that we have found is that asking the students to come in with the parents is very effective. And that's the way to get the parents there. If the parents are in one room while the students are in another room and they're both completing the same process, it takes about an hour. We find that's the best way to get the parents. Otherwise, we've had real challenges getting hold of our parents. And again, if you have a stipend for this section, it would come out of that money that's being provided. So you might be asking, what's our $250 for the focus group process for? It depends on what you're using it for. Both your high school and your college get $250, so that's $500 total for the focus group process. And how you decide to use that money is up to you. Whether you use some for stipends, that's fine. If you use it for other purposes, that's fine as well. There is online training, and we'll also provide training to those. It could be faculty, it can be staff, it can be college students. Any of those students, you do need a team of 2 that can be running those focus groups, but you can, it's a wonderful process, and as I said, you get data immediately from it. And again, the data that you receive from the high school level, you can use for college research immediately. The high school students and high school students cannot have access to those outcomes immediately, not until the end of the school year, but your college can. So again, you both receive the $250 for that focus group process, and you're invoiced after the process is completed. 6th step, we're at the end. So this is the same process again with that survey link. So whatever you found worked best in the fall is what you would do in the spring. You just provide them with that survey link. And again, they would have 2 weeks. We recommend to use a 2-week time frame, approximately 2 weeks before the finals are taken. Obviously, there's some flexibility there. In some cases, the students in high school take the finals earlier and then have a couple weeks afterwards where there's not much going around, not much going on. In that case, you might want to give it after finals. You just want it as close to the end of the year, but without being done during that stressful time would be ideal. Again, you both receive $500 for data collection, and that allows for a maximum of a 10% attrition rate. And this is, again, based on a very generous number of what we've seen fall off. Most people in the high school setting who take it in the fall take it in the spring. So I don't have any concerns about people reaching that, making sure they have enough people take that post survey. And again, at the end of the 2-week period, you provide that invoice for $1,000, and then you receive the $1,000, and it's up to you to distribute that as you see fit. So in total, there's $3,000 that you would be receiving and that you would be allocating. If you decide to change the amounts that you allocate to the high schools, that is at your discretion. We will not. There's no specific requirements there. So optional. The following year, so probably definitely after the post surveys are collected, and probably say at the end of the school year, but it'll probably be beginning of summer, most likely, just because it takes a little time to put those EB forecast reports together. But you will receive an EB forecast report, which is a beautiful report that compares and summarizes your information. I know y'all haven't seen any yet. I apologize, but you'll receive that at the probably beginning of summer, and that will be for the high school information, and the college will receive a report that they can use and modify and use for presentations, and the high school will also receive those reports. And then you will have access to the Fruved High School Toolkit, which is, again, a partnership between those college students and those high school students. So if you were interested in continuing the process the next year, you're going to have great initial data that you can just hit the ground running with. You'd have a much easier time as you implement Fruved the following year. And I wish I could tell you the details. It's like, a cliffhanger, because we're already in the development year. I actually have goosebumps. We're having a phenomenal time seeing what these high school students are doing. And so it's been a very fulfilling process. Anyway, I'll be quiet because that's not very nice to be like, oh, it's great, but I can't tell you. So I will leave that with questions, and I will stop sharing so I can see faces where there are faces, and open it up for questions. What do you think? I'm very curious. All right. Can you do more than one high school? That's a great question. Let us know if you would like to do more than one high school. That's a possibility. Basically, what we're going to, as next step from here, we're going to request that you let us know if you would like to be a control school next year, and if you would like to have more than one high school. That is a possibility. Carrie has been wonderful in working on our budgets for the past couple of days, trying to figure out how much money we have. So we will look at our budgets and see how many we can support, and then hopefully we will support as many as we can. And so yes, please let us know what you're interested in, and we'll see if we've got the finances to support. That would be wonderful. As Carrie throws me out the window, but it's better side than it was earlier. I'm so curious. So please send us emails. I won't push now. Okay, we've got one. For the focus groups, how many are we to conduct? Is it the same ones that complete the survey? No, they don't have to be the same ones that complete the survey. You would be doing one with parents, one with students, and one with teachers. And so 3 altogether total. And if you have, for instance, if you have a team of 6 students, for instance, who are trained in doing this, you could all do this in one night in about 2 hours and be done with it. And that's how efficient it can be if you can find a time. So as few as 3 parents in a focus group, or 3 students or 3 teachers, and definitely not more than 12, because that's just too much to manage. But the system is really this. If you've ever done a nominal group technique, I know that a lot of people, it's not the most common, approach for focus groups, but they're phenomenal because you get a piece of paper and you ask the question, so we of course give the guide and do the online training, but everybody writes down their answers on a piece of paper, and then you go around round robin style, and everybody shares, and you write up on a whiteboard or on a tear off sheet the answers, and then as a group they decide on their top 5 answers. And then they write down their top 5 answers on a piece of paper. And then there's actually a scoring process, which is the modification, where they get to add in how important they think it is to them, between 1 to 10, with 10 being the most important. So at the end of the night, there's no analysis. There's no, the one thing that you would have to do with your facilitator who's asking the questions, and you have a note taker who's writing down, kind of summarizing what people are saying. Because at the end of the night, you spend a few minutes, you write down kind of a summary of what each of those top 5 things meant, what they were talking about during that time. And that's what you use. So you can electronically send that to us, or you can mail us the packets if you don't feel like putting anything in. But again, that data can be used. And we did those focus groups at Tennessee first, and I have a student who's actually presented at a couple student, and she's going to hopefully do a national presentation, finding really interesting differences between the parents and the teachers and the students' perspectives. So this, it's just a great way to kind of walk out with instant data, which is very rare and qualitative. My best friend, qualitative research, keeps calling me a quant head, but that's okay. Quantitative counts too. So it's a straightforward process. I always feel like I'm the bridge between qualitative and quantitative because I think they're both wonderful. Sure. Okay. Well, unless somebody's typing, I'm not going to press you for answers, but please send me questions by email. Feel free. And also, if you're interested in participating, please send us an email and let us know so we can go ahead and figure out how many altogether we can support. So it depends on how many people are interested. This will be the next step. And so after we hear back from you, that's when we'll move forward, because the IRB, again, you are covered under our IRB for college if you didn't need to do any more. You're in individual institution. Interestingly, I'm not sure if you've heard of the what's it called, the universal rule. Who knows what that's called? It's the new. You're muted, but yes, in universal rule.
Uniform guidance. Is that what you're?
No, there's a new thing that was supposed to come out this January, but then that didn't. Something held it up, and in their new IRB regulations that are federally coming out. And part of that is that multi-site projects have to have only one IRB. So our model is actually going to be the rule for everybody soon. Not that we did it, it's just, you know. So if your IRBs have heard that that's coming, they might be a little bit more open to this idea of just being under our IRB if they gave you any trouble last year. If they didn't, you're good, you're golden. And again, if you know, depending on what you had last year, we can do versions, as you know. And so I won't go into the college level. The thing is that at your school level, some school boards require you to submit something similar to an IRB to them for approval. Some of our school boards we found don't. It really varies, but that's something else to ask, because if they do require it, then we need to probably start working with you in this next month to give you the information that you need to pass on to your high school, to your local school board so they can approve your project. As you know, that can be time consuming. Not of you, but just waiting to get the answers back. For me in Knoxville, I actually just send an email to one person and I attach it. Oh, that's great. Do we have a write-up about the project that we can give to the high schools? I think we do. I will look for it and I'll get it out to you. It's been a little while since I know I've put that together. I'm positive I've put that together, but it's been since the beginning of our development year that I have looked at it. So I'll look at it again, clean it up if it needs to be adjusted, and I'll send that out to you, along with along with what we sent to the actual our local school boards, because it has plenty of details. Good question. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? All right. Well, I'm excited. I hope I get to work with you guys. And let me know if our Fruved college information will be out at the end of this year and ready for everybody to use. And if you're interested in applying at your school, I would love to help you. So I hope to work with you all either way for a long time. Thank you. Take care.